You're listening to the Fearless Society podcast. We're building a community of fearless Christians who boldly live out the call that God has placed on our lives, who aren't afraid to talk about who we are and what we believe. Following Jesus today isn't easy, but it is worth it. Our goal is to come alongside you as we encourage and equip each other to live boldly and fearlessly, because a fearless church begins with us. Together, we are the Fearless Society.
All right. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Yeah. My name's Kasandra. I am 31, stay-at-home mama. My daughter is 21 months old, and my husband, we have been married for almost 5 years in June. So that's exciting.
Yeah.
He's a process engineer at a wallboard plant. I don't know if you've ever heard of Georgia Pacific. But yeah, he works there. We used to do ministry together, probably like, I don't know, way before we were dating. So we did ministry for a really long time together. And since Emberly was born, we have taken a break from that. And so I don't know. What else y'all want to know?
Yeah, no, I think that's good. Just a little bit to help us to get to know you a little bit more.
Okay.
Yeah, ministry can be tough with kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can imagine if you guys like having 5 little ones. So
Yeah, it can also be a little like crazy and wild, but
yeah, y'all probably are like, you have one.
we all have a different level of hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. People often like, they look at me with 5 kids and they're like, oh, I don't know how you do it. And I'm like, I don't know how I do it either, to be honest. Like, it's literally all the grace of God. Like,
Yes.
if it weren't for God, like, yeah, Olivia was hard. One was hard. And
Yeah, honestly, I think some of the hardest times in parenting was when we just had Olivia. Some of it was she was just, I mean, for the first 3 months, she was an incredible sleeper, and then she was a terrible sleeper for like a year.
Yeah.
And it was so hard.
yeah, Nick would go to work and she would be up like every half hour. Like, we were barely sleeping. Like, our saving grace was living above his parents, and we would drop Olivia off downstairs, and like for an hour, like I was living off of that hour of sleep. Like, that's
man.
it. And so Nick would go to work, and his boss would show up and be like, oh yeah, my Fitbit said I got like 8.5 hours of uninterrupted sleep last night. And Nick would be like, I want to hate you right now. Yeah. Of course, he's Nick. So he's just like, oh, that's great for you. Like,
Yeah. That's awesome.
super encouraging, laid back.
Yeah, I definitely relate to that sleep struggle bus, man. Like, I was hoping that we would be, she's almost 2. I was hoping we'd be past it. No, like, sleep is still a struggle. Like, last night was rough. It was a very rough night. And then like big emotions now, like she's getting close to 2. So like tantrums are happening. And so it's like both of those together, man, they suck.
Yeah. It's a hard season.
Definitely.
I mean, we still
like, be praying. You like have to pray for the Lord to help you through that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But
yeah.
All right. So aside from sleep, has there ever been, and raising young children, has there ever been a time in your life where you have been challenged with trusting God, or maybe you, God was calling you to live with less fear, or face something in your life that required you to trust in Him a little bit more?
Yeah, definitely. So like, couple of things like pop into my head. Like I think about, because this is kind of like there was an anniversary of my best friend and my dad dying. I guess like it's probably a few days for my best friend, and then in May it'll be for my dad, and it'll be 8 years. And so like that kind of pops into my mind of like a really hard time of just like trusting the Lord through that. And just just trusting that he's sovereign, because like I prayed really hard for them to be healed and they weren't, and so that was like a really hard time of like just trusting that the Lord is sovereign and he's in this. And then trusting that like nobody else is going to die. Cause like when people die like that close, you're like, who's next?
Yeah.
And so, and then probably the most recent, which y'all have probably seen, is just Christopher's cancer journey, and just having to trust the Lord with his health and his healing, and that thankfully he's been healed, but that he won't get it again.
Mm.
And so, I've definitely just had to rely on the Lord and recall his truth and kind of lean into community with both of those things. But just the most recent thing with cancer, just trust that God's sovereign, even when it's scary.
Yeah. And now correct me if I'm wrong, but you found out that he had cancer right around the same time that you found out that you were pregnant, right?
Yes. So we had decided to start trying so it was 2020, and we decided to start trying in like August, and like Christopher in like early October, like he had no symptoms of like cancer at all. Like he only had one symptom pop up, and it was a very rare symptom. And so like, so he felt like a lymph node, like down here on his neck. And it would hurt anytime he drank a beer. And so there was this new brewery in town, and so he was trying out the new, because they had some like new flavors, and so like he had like tried one and like noticed he had some pain there, and then like a few days later tried another one. I'm like, oh man, this like hurts, and so he like made the correlation that like every time I drink alcohol, like this thing hurts really bad. And I was talking to my doctor friend about it, and she's like, well, it could be nothing. But then another little lump came up beside it, and she was like, yeah, like you should probably go get that checked out. And so, but yeah, that was like the only symptom he had. He didn't have night sweats. He didn't have like weight loss. He didn't have anything else that's kind of associated with cancer at all. And so we got that checked out. And they did a CT scan. Or like, this is really concerning. We need to do further testing. And so that was like, obviously like hit really hard and scary. And then like, so they had to do a biopsy. And so like he has this huge scar on his neck right here where they took out, they did a neo biopsy, and that didn't come back clear. And so they're like, okay, well, we need to just take it out. And so they took it out and they did a biopsy on that. And one of the people that like looks over the CT scans, like he when he did the needle biopsy, he's like, I'm almost positive this is lymphoma, just so you know. And but they're like, well, still, you still need to go get surgery though. And or after the needle biopsy came back not like conclusive, they're like, hey, you need to go get the surgery to know for sure. But we're almost positive this is lymphoma. And so like in between that time of finding out of like, is this for sure 100% lymphoma, I found out I was pregnant. And so that's pretty crazy.
So you entered
but it was also like an answered prayer. Like we wanted to get pregnant. And I had actually thought once he had got, like, they're like, yeah, he probably has lymphoma. I was like, man, I guess we are going to have to put that on hold. Like, we're not going to get to keep trying, because when you're on chemo, you don't get to keep trying. You have to be very, very careful about, like even like sweat and like, saliva, everything, so it's just, you have to be very cautious. So like the timing of that was pretty crazy.
Yeah. So you kind of like entered, one of the most exciting seasons of life in your first pregnancy, and having that joy of going to have a child, while also entering probably one of the hardest seasons of your life, and seeing the person that you love most in this life struggling And
Yeah.
that, man, like, how did you handle all of those conflicting emotions all at
Yeah.
once?
Well, first I cried a lot. I
I'm
cried a
sure.
lot. And it was just like, even though they were like, because this is what they told us. They're like, if you're gonna get cancer, this is the one you want. Because which like that's like what? But like this is the one you want. There's a very high recovery rate. And so like a lot of people who get this cancer, they do chemo for a few months and it never ever comes back. I'm like, okay, like, so that's like encouraging a little bit, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
just, I cried at first a lot and was kind of like, oh, like, why God, why would this happen? And then then I found out I'm pregnant and I'm just like, oh, like, this is good, but this is scary. And like, I don't know. So I just really, at first I cried, and then we surrounded ourselves with community. I think that's really important, just like reaching out to your brothers and sisters in Christ. And so we surrounded ourselves with community. And then somebody actually did like speak a word over Christopher. They said that, it's pretty bold word to speak. He shall live and not die. And so like kind of held on to that and just was like, okay, like, and there's actually a scripture in the Bible. I forget where it's at. I should know it, but, where it actually says, like, talks about like, he shall live and he shall not die. And so I just kind of clung to that, and just trusted, that the Lord, had us. I don't know. I feel like the Lord gave us a kind of, I don't know, supernatural ability to just like kind of look at the positive, like in all of it. There were moments like were obviously for Christopher, like the chemo really sucked. Like it brought him down a lot. And actually that season was really dry for him with the Lord. So that was hard, on him. But yeah, we just trusted in the Lord, trusted in his timing with like the pregnancy. Like the fact that like she was conceived, like, at the time that she was, like, we didn't have to delay at all, to start a family. And then even like, so when you get cancer, they try to talk to you about like planning for the future and like, hey, you should probably get like your sperm frozen just in case, because you can become sterile. And so they had talked to us about that, and it just didn't feel right. Like, I think that, yeah, it's fine if people do that, but it just didn't feel right. And so,
Mm.
and I had some fear creep up, like, well, maybe we should, like, what if I lose this baby? Cause it was really early. But we just decided to trust that, no, like, God, like, we got pregnant at this time right before you had to even do anything, any chemo or anything. We're just going to trust that she's going to be okay. And she was. So, yeah.
Praise God.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I think one of the things that we've been talking about as we've been developing this podcast and this idea of living fearlessly is that, and then I was listening to a book just yesterday, an audiobook, and he was talking about fear and how we talk about it in the church, and how so often we get this idea that because the Bible talks about being not being afraid, don't be afraid, don't fear, that to feel those emotions is wrong. And yet I don't think that's what the Bible is teaching at all. And so I love that you're comfortable being real and saying, look, like, my first reaction was just to cry and to feel afraid. And I think that it's as we feel those emotions and as we allow ourselves to really come to grips with all of that and then experience God carrying us through it. I think that's what the kind of the fearless life as of a Christian is about.
Yeah.
It's not about
sure.
not feeling it. It's about letting God carry you through it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, God gave us those emotions. And so just he gave us those for a reason. And so,
Yeah.
yeah,
Now,
that's really good.
one of the things that you had just said is that you kind of surrounded yourself with community. So can you talk a little bit about that? Like, how did you find your community? Like, how did you set up that community that would help carry you through, what you were going through? And if there's anything specifically that your community did that helped you the most to be able to continue to seek God and trust God and carry you through, what are some of those things?
Yeah. So we had a really like good church family. So I think just like making sure that you're a part of a church and a community. I think that was like super important. Both me and Christopher have mentors. And so my mentor, just reaching out to her and asking for prayer when I felt scared or that fear started creeping in. And just like also when, just getting prayer, like when we found out, we had the elders pray over him because, that's what it says to do in the Bible. And we're like, all right, we're just we're going to have some prayer.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, just making sure, I think it's always important to make sure that you have like, somebody who's older than you who can like pour into your life, has experience, has seen the Lord move and do things that you haven't, who can like speak into the situation and be like, hey, like, this is like, I'm praying for you, that here's an encouraging word, or like, this is the Lord, this is the enemy, don't listen to that. Like, and so I think that's super important to always have find somebody in your life that can just pour into you. And so when those hard seasons do come, you have somebody who you can, they're not the be all, right? They're not the person that like, they're not God, but they are somebody that can help filter your emotions and your thoughts when it's hard for you in that hard moment and can come beside you and pick you up. We found that to be really helpful. So.
I think that's so important.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, we've talked about, this story has come up a lot, in my life right now, both in the Bible studies I'm in and just again, in our conversations about, fearless society and what we want to do. And, just, when the Israelites crossed the Jordan River and they're about to go into the promised land, like God said to Joshua, send one person from each tribe to go pick up one of these stones and bring it and build this memorial. And this is to serve as a reminder of what God has done. And so it wasn't just this one-time thing like, oh, here's this pile of rocks and we're just going to celebrate. We're just going to worship God for what he did. But part of the command was to teach these things to the next generation and the next generation. And so it was this ongoing passing down of generation to generation, just the goodness of God and the faithfulness of God, so that when the younger generations encountered something that they struggled with and encountered a battle that they thought was impossible or anything in their life that was like, hey, this is in the way, this is impossible, that they would be able to remember back to, but wait, I know that God has done this before. I know that God has done this. And I've never personally seen it, but these stories that have been passed down to me from generations before are now helping me to overcome the battles that I face on a daily basis or the things that I'm struggling with on a daily basis. And I think I kind of hear that in your story of how important it is to have people in our lives who can pass down those stories to us. Somebody older who has, you said who's seen God move, who's seen what God can do, and who can encourage you to shift your focus back to Christ when you need it. Yeah. And we tend to have this like individualistic approach to faith in our country, at least. And we're like, well, it's that like underdog American dream story. Like, I'm going to make it and I'm going to make it on my own and I can do this. But Christianity calls us to be a part of a body and a part of a community. And we can't do it on our own because we're going to face things that are impossible. We're going to face seasons in our life, whether you currently are, or whether you're going to in the future. Everybody faces situations that are impossible for us to go through on our own. And we need the body of Christ to help us and carry us through and encourage us through that.
Yeah. I don't know how people are like, I don't need church. Like, yeah, you don't need church to be a Christian, but like have fun doing it on your own. You need those people. You need those people to lift you up. And so it's so important.
Yeah, we've been having a lot of conversations with some people here in our church about the importance of community and fellowship in the body, and that we together as believers are the body of Christ. And and if you detach yourself from that, it's not good for you, and it's not good for the rest of the body either.
Well, yeah, it makes you weak too. Like, it makes you prey to the enemy. Like, when you're not together.
And so certainly, I think I don't have any reason to necessarily uphold the church as an institution, but as the body and bride of Christ, it's essential.
For sure.
And so our buildings can go away, and our institutions can go away, and our leadership structures can go away, and all of that can go away. I think all of those have purposes, but all that can go away and we'd be fine.
Yeah.
But we need each other.
Yes. For sure.
How do you think your life has changed? How have you grown through that season?
Well, I think I feel like obviously, like, I've learned to trust the Lord more. I've just learned to that, like, how important it is to recall, like, his truth, how important it is to remember his goodness. I've had, like, many things in my life where I've had to kind of just, like, trust in the Lord and recall his truth and rely on him. And so this is kind of just like another thing that's like just been added to that. I feel like honestly, if I'm being super truthful, that fear with like the whole cancer journey is something that I feel like the Lord is still bringing me through. So like, it's because he's still, it's been 2 years since he's been in remission, which, like, that could sound like a long time, but it's not. It doesn't feel like it. And so, like, still trusting that the Lord, like, has him, and, like, not living in that fear of, like, oh, something could happen again. Like, because it's, when you don't have a child, it's a little easier. Like, it's not easy to, like, imagine losing your spouse, but, like, once you have a child, it's like even harder. like I cannot imagine doing this life without him, without her having her daddy, like, so, like, that, like, those fears kind of like come up, and you're just like, I can't imagine doing this on my own. And so I'm still, like, working through that and, like, giving that to the Lord, like, constantly, because, like, he just had, like, a scan a few weeks ago, and that fear, like, just starts rising up. Like, what if it came back? What if we didn't notice it? He doesn't sleep well, or, like, everything that like, every little thing that he has with him, like, he doesn't feel good. What does that mean? Like, trying not to, like, get in my head. But I don't know. It's just been another thing where it's like, hey, like, no, you need to trust in the Lord. Probably just, like, learning more about the sovereignty of the Lord too, I think, has been something that, like, I've been trying to learn through that, and have learned, because, like, me and Christopher were just talking, and, we may have not handled that season, like, the perfect Christian way, like, that people would say, like, oh, like they got really close to God probably during that time. And they probably, he had all this time to, like, to himself. He probably, like, got really close to the Lord and just felt him. And it was like, it was really dry, and just not, like, we didn't really get super close. But the Lord wasn't like, oh, Christopher, you didn't do A, B, and C, I'm not going to heal you. Like, no, like, the Lord's sovereignty, like, it was, the plan is that Christopher's healed. And so just, like, trusting that, just learning about his sovereignty, and that, like, the Lord's going to do what he's going to do, and he's still going to do what he's going to do. Like, I can be fearful and be scared and play all these what if games, but like the Lord's going to be sovereign over Christopher and over his health, and just trusting in that. And it kind of ties in a little bit with like my best friend and my dad dying, because like, um, like when people die in your life, you're like, man, no one's safe. No one's safe. Like anything can happen. And so like Christopher isn't safe. The Lord could take him. But just trusting that the Lord has a bigger plan, for that if it does happen. Pray that it doesn't, but it
Right.
could. And just trusting that the Lord will take care of me in that if it does. So I hope
So
that
how do
answers
you-
it. It's kind of like
Yeah.
everywhere.
No, that was really good.
Yeah.
How do you guys look forward? Like, are you guys planning what's next in the future? Like, how do you look ahead? Like, what do you envision when you look ahead? Or how do you trust God as you look forward to what he wants to do and what he's going to do in you guys and where he's going to lead you?
Yeah. I mean, we just like, live life like normal, right? Like I don't, like most days I'm not thinking about like the fact that like he's in remission and like it could, like something could happen. And so we just, we keep planning for the future, keep trusting just that the Lord has our steps planned, and that whatever happens in the future, that's future Cassandra and Christopher's problem. Just try not to like stress about it too much in the day to day, and just we keep asking for the Lord to guide us where He wants us to go, and whether that be in work or what I'm doing from home, or I don't know, we just live life like normal.
Yeah, I think sometimes as Christians, we just have to, I definitely believe, and I've experienced God giving me specific direction and things
Yeah.
to go after. But there's been many more times in my life where I know God's there and I know God's with me and I know he has a plan, but he's left it up to me to make the best decisions that I can.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So what advice would you give to somebody who is wanting to trust God, wanting to pursue God, and maybe wanting to fix their eyes on Christ during a hard situation, but like, somebody who wants to trust God more in their life, and
Yeah.
especially when it comes to fear, or when it comes to struggles or things in this life, what piece of advice would you give them?
I think it's pretty simple. It's not super spiritual. It would just be to recall the Lord's truth, meditate on His word, like renew your mind, right? Like all of the fear, all of the worry, all of like not trusting Him really just starts in the mind, and it's a lot of like what if games, right? And so like if you want to trust in Him more, you have to dwell on His truth, dwell on who He is, what He does, and what He has done. And I think your trust and your faith in Him will build up. And then also back to the community thing, just like surround yourself with people who are going to point you towards Christ, and remind you of His truth when you have a hard time reminding yourself. So yeah.
Just out of curiosity, I don't think this has to go either way, but do you have like physical reminders? I know some people do like sticky notes on their bathroom mirror. Some people do things in their Bible. Some people just kind of connect certain experiences with certain physical objects in their life that remind them of what God's done. Is that I tend to not be that way. But I'm just curious if you have any kind of physical reminders to remind you of those things.
So not since moving to our new house, I haven't done this, but you saying that makes me want to do it. I used to post scriptures everywhere around the house, just to recall God's truth and just especially ones about not fearing and not being anxious but I haven't done that here. I need to do that. That would be really good. But no, I don't have any type of uh an object or a memorial type thing to look to and be like, oh yeah, but that would be a good idea.
Yeah. I think for me in my life, I've had a few of those things. I said, I tend not to be that way, but for me, they've always kind of come naturally. I think even now, a simple one, like the minivan that we have right now, there's just kind of an interesting story of how God brought us to that vehicle. And so it's you just get in it and you remember how God led us through that season of our life, and so it's not something that I necessarily deliberately put in place, but just things in my life that remind me of God's faithfulness.
Yeah, for sure. I can't think of anything on the top of my head.
Yeah.
Like that.
Cool.
All right. So if anybody, and again, we probably should have asked you if you wanted to do this ahead of time, but
yes,
if anybody wants to, okay, good. good.
Yeah.
All right. So if anybody is wondering, where can they learn more about you? Can they follow you? Where should they go?
So I have an Instagram page. It's called Simply Kasandra. There's a dot in between that. So simply.Kasandra, and Cassandra is spelled with a K and one S. So a little different than most.
Yeah. All right. So we'll put that in the description. We'll put
Sounds
that
good.
link right to your Instagram page in there so people can find you and be encouraged.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey guys, this is Gabby. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Fearless Society podcast. As always, don't forget to share, subscribe, all that good stuff. It really helps us to get the message of hope and faith out there to a wider audience. You can find us on social media. All of the links to our social media accounts will be in the description, and new episodes launch every Tuesday. We can't wait till next time. See you later.